have David Weil, who is that man behind the curtain over there. We have been fortunate to do just that. So when Carrie Candrian walked in with her big idea, David and I were waiting for her. We knew immediately that we wanted to help her bring this beautiful, meaningful, and transformative exhibit to our campus. Dr. Carrie Candrian is an associate professor in the Division of General Internal Medicine at the University of Colorado School of Medicine and a Cambia Health Foundation Sojourn Scholar. Her research explores how communication shapes and is shaped by perceptions, attitudes, and biases in the community. And her focus is on using her research and expertise to improve health equity for older adults who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, as well as those who care for them. Now, my biomedical colleagues often talk about translational research, bringing scientific discoveries from the laboratory into the clinic for new treatments and new ways to improve the health of populations. Eye to Eye is translational and transformative research. Carrie has given us human faces rather than statistics, and powerful words rather than data points. Thank you to Carrie and to all of the women who shared themselves and their stories. And now, Carrie Candrian.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones. Thank you, David. And thanks to the Center for Bioethics and Humanities for hosting this. To all of you who are here tonight, in person and online, thank you for being here. It means a lot. To all of the women who are part of this exhibit, thank you. You are amazing. Because we're in this beautiful gallery on a major medical research-focused campus, I wanted to start with a few statistics. 56% of LGBT adults report experiencing some form of discrimination from a healthcare provider. For those who are trans or gender non-binary, it goes up to 70%. 48% of LGBT older adults say their own doctors don't even know they're LGBT. And here's the big one. Staying silent about this fundamental part of themselves can take 12 years off their lives. I could stand up here sharing statistics till I'm blue in the face and you're all asleep. I hear these numbers, I say them so often, I sometimes forget I'm part of them. Because it's very easy to look away when we hear general numbers about groups of people, but it's harder when you see, know, or even love someone behind the statistics. And that's really the purpose of this exhibit, to meet individual people behind the data, so their stories break the stereotypes and show how real lives are affected by these devastating numbers. So as you look at these portraits and read their quotes, think of the toll that a lifetime of stigma and discrimination has had on them and on the millions of other people in the LGBT community. It's affected jobs, housing, families, their support systems, and then think of the effects it has on physical and mental health. And yet, all these women said yes to being part of this, proudly, to be seen as who they are, to face you and everyone who comes into this gallery eye to eye. That's how strong and brave these women are. Yes, attitudes have changed towards the LGBT community, but not enough and not everywhere. We are definitely not out of the woods with all this. This exhibit will not give 12 years back, but it might make you think differently. Next time you're with a patient, a family member, a colleague, even a friend. And that's a good start. So as you leave tonight, I hope these women and their stories stay with you as they've stayed with me. And now I'm very excited and honored to introduce someone who many of you may know. She was an associate professor of physical therapy for 38 years, and she's still a beloved member of the Anschutz community. She's an ordained minister in the Episcopal Church, and her portrait is here with her wife, Joan. They've been together 44 years. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nancy Johnson Bookstein.
Want to use it, David? I can use it. If I fall off, you have to pick me up. Well, good afternoon, and thanks for coming. I was here for 40 of my 38 years. I keep coming back, but I taught in this building, I presented in this building, and in that building, and in that building, and in that building. And this is looking at healthcare for us. And I must tell you that my wife Joan, over there, we went around and we read all of the things that you said and people said. And we realized that probably 90% of those things we all could have said. And they were all different, but they all happened to all of us. And it was kind of jolting to remember that. My career here started in 1978. And in 1979 or 1980, I was outed by a faculty member outside on the quad with the words, well, how's it like to be gay? And we weren't alone, and I hadn't told her, and I was mortified. And I was actually afraid of losing my job. I didn't. This place is the safest place I've ever been because I grew up here. I should say I grew old here. And so I know people, and they know me, and they knew me before they knew that I was not straight. My wife worked at Rose Hospital in the OR. She led the team of nurses. And in the middle of the night, instead of calling an orderly, when the phone rang, we both got up and I went into Rose with her and was the orderly for an emergency. That was accepted, not by everybody, but by most people. And so people at Rose knew who I was, and knew who she was, and knew who we were. And people here, because I had her teaching critical care stuff in the medicine unit for the physical therapy program. She had no interest in teaching anything that related to anatomy and cadavers, however. But the people here knew, and the faculty here knew. And so our life compared to many, healthcare-wise, has been easy. Not always easy. We always have to explain ourselves. We always have to wonder, do we really have to go through this again? It's 2021. And we do, we still do. I don't, with long as I take my care here. I have a lot of doctors because I'm old, and they just laugh at me. But when we had a motorcycle accident, Joan was in the ICU, I had to fight to be there with her. She had a liver laceration. They didn't know that she was going to make it. And they told me to wait in the waiting room. And I wasn't soft and fuzzy about that. So we've had a lot of experiences like all of you have had. I think the times healthcare has been a problem for us, for me, is in psychiatry and in psychology. As part of going through the process for ordination in the church, I had to spend like 2 entire days with a psychologist who did everything you can imagine. And I won't tell you his name, I think he's still practicing, but I had ink blots I had to do for hours. And it was the summer, and I was teaching anatomy. And we were in the pelvis. So what I saw in those ink blots were not what I wanted to tell them I saw. And I finally told them what I did for a living. And I said, do you really want me to tell you what I really see, or do you want me to make something else up? He said, tell me what you see. And when I was done, he said to me, you know, if I didn't know what you did, I would be on the phone to your bishop in 2 seconds and tell him you really needed to be put away. And he also told me that never would I get into the ordination process because I was gay. He didn't know why I was there. It was ridiculous. They weren't going to let me in. Yeah. So that wasn't a very comfortable thing. Another thing that happened to us psychiatry-wise, psychology-wise, was we admitted our youngest daughter, who was bulimic, to the ER, to the psych ER here. Well, it wasn't here, it was at 9th in Colorado. And she was taken away and interviewed, and we were interviewed, and her father was there as well. And a psychology medical student, psychiatry medical student, said to her, well, what do you think about, how do you feel about your mother being a lesbian? And she didn't know. That was a little hard. That was a little hard. That was a lot hard. Because of course, our daughter then looked at Jonah and said, if you love me, you'll take off your ring. It's happened to a lot of people. It's just painful. So our story with healthcare is an easy story for the most part. My story with the church was a little harder. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it to be treated like that. However, I had a cervical fusion here 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, and there wasn't any question about anybody, from anyone, about who Joan was and where she was going to stay when I was in the ICU. She was there 24/7 until I was discharged. And some of that is because of my primary care physician, who you will meet in a little bit. And some of it was because of me having to make sure that people understood that my need depended on her presence. And so we've been very happy, married for 10, together for 44. And we've had all of the same kinds of experiences everybody else has. But I think part of my pre-ordination ministry was working with students who were trying to come out and didn't know how. Medical students, PT students, physician assistant students, somehow were drawn to me for reasons I don't know. I never, had an L on my forehead or anything. But, and I was also intimate with them because some of them had never seen a dead body before. So between the two things, I worked with many students on what was bothering them and how they were being troubled. So that's my story, and I'm glad to be here. It was a challenge when Carrie called me. I'm not sure I would have done it if I hadn't been retired. I'm just not sure I would have done it. So we're still scared. Thank you.
So much. Great. Well, now I'm honored again to introduce someone who many of you will probably know as well. She is a professor of medicine, associate dean for clinical affairs, chief medical officer, University of Colorado Hospital. an internationally recognized leader in high-quality end-of-life care, an advocate for the arts, and at a personal level, she's been a remarkable mentor to me and supporter of this work. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Jean Kuttner.
My mask gets stuck on this earring all day long. Might just have to hang it there. So I was so honored when Carrie asked me to make a few remarks. Carrie asked me to talk about, with my physician hat on, why this is so important. And I actually think, Bookie, you probably just described it better than I could. It's so important for me as a physician to really understand who the person is. And to understand who a person is, I need to understand what's important to them. And it's always been very clear to me that Joan is very important to Bookie. So that's very natural. And, it's incumbent on us as healthcare providers to make that a welcoming environment where everybody feels safe to be able to share those parts of them that are important, because people are so much more than their diseases. And to help keep people, what do I love about clinical care is helping people, live their best lives, whatever that looks like. And really the only way to do that is to really understand who people are, what's important to them, who is important to them. And so I'm so grateful to all of you that were willing to share your stories. I'm so thrilled that we as an institution are hosting this. And it's actually one of my great pleasures in life to serve as Carrie's mentor. I was telling Danielle beforehand, it's been so fun actually to watch Carrie find her voice. And because Carrie's been able to find her voice over the last several years, she's been able to give all of you voice as well. And that has just been honestly magical to see. And it's what we should be doing in an academic center. And to be able to then share that voice through art has a special place in my heart. My mom, who passed away in 2014, was an artist, and her art was often about some very difficult social subjects. We always sort of joked of like, oh man, my mom's art is that art that like you don't really want to see over the dinner table, except for maybe the masks, but Tess knows because we actually did an exhibit of my mom's art here. So to be able to see Carrie use that venue, that platform of art to get across such an important message is just, it's very, very familiar to me and so important. So thank you all. Thank you, Carrie, for having the courage to pursue this as a line of academic pursuit. Not everybody would have that courage, honestly, and I think Carrie's just giving voice to such an important topic that I want to just keep supporting you. So thank you all for coming, and keep getting your voice out there, please.
Thanks so much, Jean. Thanks to all of you. Before we open it up for discussion, I do want to take a moment and just introduce the rest of the women who are here tonight that are in the exhibit. So when I call your name, just give the audience a wave so they can see you. Martha? Carrie? Anne? Esther? Kathy? Joan? Nancy? Pam? Kim? Tamara? Julia? Melissa? Belle? Agnes? Mary Lou? Tracy? Jude? Everybody. Okay.
So you all have a microphone in front of you. If you have a question or comment, all you have to do is push that little button down, but you have to hold it down. We've engineered this so nobody goes on too long. We also will take a few questions. Lori and I will try to keep our eyes on the chat and take a few questions from our Zoom audience. So let's open it up for questions and comments to any one of our speakers, as well as to questions and comments for the women who we're here to celebrate.
I have a question. I realized all of us who have our pictures on the wall, but I'm curious as to the people who are here who are not on the wall and what you think about what's happened today.
Well, she just put everybody on the spot, so.
I'm not on the wall, but I felt like I guess the overwhelming feeling was a thankfulness, a gratefulness. I feel like so much of my experience as a queer person is predicated on your experiences, on the road that you paved for us, and that so well that feels overwhelming because a lot of these fears, a lot of the things that you guys even brought up are some things that I have not even thought about. Even though I feel like I was born in the 80s, so I have like some I feel like the dual experience of that transitional period. So, but even like Carrie's experience of coming out to herself at 16, but then not feeling comfortable to come out to her family till for 11 years, like those kind of things. I feel like I'm on that same sort of precipice. But I was just really thankful for your experiences, for your sharing, for I don't know, for just making things easier for us. Your hurtful experiences of being in the healthcare system and having to navigate how you share your partner, fighting for access in those spaces, those are things that I feared as before I got married, but in the time that we have been married, they don't seem that serious now. But I know that I have those privileges because they were much harder for you all. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that you all bear that burden for us. And so thank you. That was my overwhelming feeling, is just to say thank you. But also I want to say this, those stories do still resonate. So know that, I guess I wanted to say, we aren't coasting. We aren't coasting on the work that you've done. We are still working, we are still fighting, and we do know that the privileges and the things that are easier for us are because of the work that you've done. And that is a motivation and an obligation that we still be in that fight. So even though I'm saying thank you, know that we're still fighting. So yeah.
So my name is Scott. I'm Estelle's son. As someone who was born far before the 80s, I think I speak for all of us. We wish we were born in the 80s. The overwhelming feeling that I had is, even at the age of 52, I am still learning about what my mother has gone through in her life. And that's not easy. And I appreciate that. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to talk to my kids about it and my siblings about it, because there's aspects that we have never considered because we've never had to in our life experiences. And hopefully we as a family can learn from that more than just myself.
Well, it's lovely to know you aren't coasting, but I didn't think your generation was. I think you've made tremendous strides, particularly in the area of trans. I mean, we need to do so much more, but it seems to me that I have friends now who are non-binary. What an accomplishment for all of us to have gotten that far. I mean, that's remarkable. I just also wanted to say thank you to all of you for hosting this. This is a remarkable place. And thank you for Carrie for creating this experience. I've been an activist all my life and I see myself as pretty strong, but I have to say that having my portrait here just blew me away. It was a whole nother level. And I told Carrie once she sent me the pictures, I said, I'm standing taller. And that's a remarkable accomplishment. And finally, I'd want to say, if you all want to have students or staff talk with my generation, we could give them some insight on how not to deal with lesbians and other gay people. I think you have a room of volunteers here, so feel free to call on us. Thank you.
You know, I want to speak just for a moment. We have a One Book, One Campus program that all of our first-year students, regardless of PT students, med students, nursing students, all read. And we have a series of book sessions, and I do films that are associated. And this year, it is My Path to Womanhood, and it is about a trans woman. It is her memoir, and we have put together an entire semester's work for these first-year students around that particular experience. So we're trying, we're working hard. Okay, we got a quiet Zoom space tonight.
Right.
Oh, there you go, you got
Hey,
it.
I got it, all right? I'm a little slow here. You know, thank you so much, and thank you, everybody. This has been wonderful. You know, I'm really glad to hear what, you know, you all are doing in the medical community. I'm remembering, yeah, way back when, okay? It wasn't that long ago, but long enough. When Tamara was really, she was getting very sick. And we were in the ER, okay, over on 9th Avenue. And they were having such a hard time. Excuse me for being me, okay? You know, and for her being her, but I am her partner. And she really was, I mean, she was in a lot of pain. Being gay does not mean that your pain is not worse than anybody else, okay? And, you know, I don't know what it is about ER staff in particular, but they need to be hit on the head, I believe, at times. Not physically, but verbally at least, okay? The physical part's very tempting. But, you know, really, their whole concern was the fact that she was lesbian. I don't, you know, and I don't get that. I saw it and I never have, but it was all over her records as well. Now, which we found out later. You know, what it was is that I actually got an MRI out of these people. You guys know it's very hard to do, but that happened and I don't know how still. But we got her diagnosis, which was, you know, which was important as far as why the pain was there. And it was not because she was lesbian, amazingly enough. Okay, we found out later about the plaques on her. Yeah, you have multiple sclerosis. I want to thank you for knowing that you all are really listening. That's important though too. And things have been easier with the ER, even on her end when I've had to have my own unfortunate visits. So you guys are helping a great deal, and thank you everybody for sharing. You know, it's been wonderful, learning quite a bit.
Well, I'm Estelle, and I had throat surgery recently, so it's kind of hard to talk, but I just want to thank Carrie for doing this. I think back 40 years ago when I came out, I didn't come out young, I was still almost 50 when I came out. And so I was really terrified. I mean, there's just no way I could have put my picture up in a public building. Oh my goodness sakes. But anyway, thank you, Carrie, for doing this. And I've had some interesting experiences with doctors in various cities over the years, and things are better now, I think. They really are. And now I'm in that, oh, aren't I? I'm in that not enviable position of living in assisted living, and I'm back in the closet again. I mean, I don't know. I just don't have to talk about it. I don't have a partner. I have kids and a family around, so nobody asks any questions, and I don't have to talk about it. I just have a lot of girlfriends who come visit, you know. But anyway, that's an old lady for you anyway. Um, it's a kind of a strange feeling, because after I did come out, I was pretty open in most of my life. I also am ordained in the United Church of Christ, and that is a process when you're gay. Oh dear me! And it was a long time ago when it didn't happen very often. Oh, but I'm glad to be here, and I really thank you, Carrie, for doing this. And I'll give my voice a rest. Thank you.
So much.
Hello, my name is Agnes. I want to thank Carrie as well for putting this together. It's strange the connections that women have, and we have a mutual friend who works for another hospital. I am a nurse and I work for a hospital, still working. And so I jumped at this chance just to say, back in the day, I was actually out partying on the night of Stonewall. I grew up in New York City, and I never thought I'd be sitting in this kind of a space at this time in my life. I have been in and out of the closet because it was sometimes fashionable and sometimes not. I have lost family. I have lost my inheritance. I've gained my partner of 28 years. And, and so I stand, and I finally stand on both feet. And I look the world in the eye. And I was remarking to Carrie, I said, what a way to come out at work, huh? So here we are, making our statements and drawing that line in the sand and deciding, we're going to be and be who we are and live who we are. Finally, I don't have to explain. Landlords, doctors, pick five. I can just be Agnes, and she can just be Mary Lou, and we're together. And I make sure they know that we're together and that there's no separation. No, I will not leave the room. Yes, I do watch the monitors. I do, because I know what I'm looking at. But, it is the strangest coming together of events that puts us in this room together. It's an honor to be here with you, ladies. Thank you so much.
May I just say thank you for the incredible piano. I mean, it's wonderful, and I appreciate your being here.
Okay, this is good to hear. So no questions, but lots of thank yous, lots of compliments, lots of praise from our Zoom participants out there.
I have a question. My name's Mary Lou. You know what, we have had in the past several friends die in the hospital, and they were lesbian or gay or whatever. And there was trouble getting in to see them, to be with them, and they had no family here, you know. And I think there should be some sort of an opening for something like that, you know. I'm in fear of if Agnes should get sick or I should get sick and be in the hospital, that either one of us won't be able to see each other, you know, because we're not married, you know, but we've been partners for a long time. You know. I am worried about that.
But I am putting you on the spot.
But you
But
do
could
that,
you speak
Tess.
a little bit? Well, but could you speak a little bit to, you know, what the policies are and partners, non-married partners?
Yeah, I'm actually not aware that we have any policies that indicate who can come in. That it's really designated by the individual to say, you know, yes, I want that person to come and not. So I think there's been some big changes in that over time. Of course, there's all the COVID visitation limitations, but let's put that aside. But I think just in terms of identifying who can come in to see a patient, I'm not aware that we have any. Danielle, you were shaking your head not to, that you're not aware we have any limitations based on marriage, et cetera.
That is, yeah, I don't think so. And I think it's a reason to fill out like a POA form. I mean, because then you have a piece of paper that, I mean, Colorado, I think my understanding is going to listen to you more than a lot of other states. But it's, if you have it on paper, even better, I'd say.
Yeah, so I think what Danielle's talking about is differentiating who can come in as a visitor to the hospital, but the key piece of then who can be your decision maker if you lose capacity to make a medical decision. And that's one place where I actually would get it on paper as a medical durable power of attorney. Colorado's actually got some funky laws on that, that in some ways you could say is good. Colorado doesn't go by blood or marriage on decision makers. Colorado has this thing called the proxy law, which requires all, quote, interested parties to get together and decide who's the right decision maker for that person. So on the one hand, you could say that's great, you know, because if everybody knows that you're the right decision maker for each other, then you don't, it's not a problem. But I think where you run into is if there's somebody else, say a family member or somebody says, no, I'm the right decision maker. So I think that is one place where having an actual medical durable power of attorney is helpful.
So much. Thanks, Jean. And thank you, Danielle.
I'm also,
Yes.
I'm one of those people who's not on the wall, but I'm here to support my colleagues. So I work with Carrie and Jean. I'm a statistician, so I'm probably the only one that would not have fallen asleep if you kept going and going with the stats. I was getting very excited. Sad, but glad that Carrie is into stats like I am. But I just want to share, so I grew up, my aunt is a lesbian and I played college softball. And so I've had some of the best experiences in my life around lesbians. I have a lot of friends who are lesbians and I've just been so inspired by Carrie. I always get verklempt when I was crying looking at the pictures out there. So, but I also wanted to share a story. So last week, my daughter Ingrid, she is in first grade, and she came home and she said, "Mom, do I have to get married someday?" I said, "Well, only if you want to." And she said, who should I marry?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, you're only 6. And she said, "Well, I think I want to marry Susie Q. She's such a great friend of mine." And I said, "Okay, you should ask her if she wants to do that someday." So I think parents have a role of making sure we shape our kids so that they aren't growing up with a stigma. They aren't growing up thinking you can only marry someone of the opposite sex. And so I've always tried to be cognizant of that. And I think this has just been really eye-opening in that respect.
I'll raise a question. So I'm Danielle Loeb. I work here, but I'm also a member of the community as a queer person. And the question got raised of like living in assisted living, and this is something I honestly live in fear about as a 50-year-old. You know, like, ugh, what happens then, right? It's like a vulnerable. It feels very vulnerable to me to look at it and have my mom actually in like dementia care. Like, oh, what does that look like? And so, I really appreciate your work, Carrie, because I think it like pulls out like it's one thing when you know when people are working and having our lives in that way, and then another thing when you think about the next phase of life. And I'm curious as if you or if other people like about aging and like communities of aging and what that looks like. I personally think queer communities of aging could be much more interesting than than the others in the world. But I just thought I would raise that as like the like actually needing care, regular, daily thing. I actually think a lot about now. So
I have an answer to that question. I have a friend who's now retired, and I will give her name and information to Carrie, and maybe Carrie could write something up about this. But she was employed in Boulder, and she was the lesbian, gay, bisexual representative of Boulder City and County. And I went to a seminar that she gave that was expressly addressed to people who had retirement homes and how should they handle their queer customers. And the interesting part is there were about 20 of us in the room, and 2 or 3 women who were nurses who were interested in the subject who were there, and to me they looked like they were lesbians. And Nancy had introduced herself as the leader of the group, but she didn't tell anybody she was a lesbian. And I was the next to the last person to introduce myself and why was I there, that kind of thing. And I called Nancy on her omission of fact that she needed to introduce herself as a lesbian when straight people were there wanting to know what to do, how to handle gay people in our rest home or retirement home or whatever they're called. Anyway, I'll write some more of that story out and send it to Carrie, and she can send it on to you guys. But I did get Nancy to come out to that group.
I think the reality is that all of us are fearful of growing old and growing alone and what's going to happen to us. And I can appreciate what you're experiencing, Estelle. By the way, we miss you at Windsor Gardens.
Hi, having the experience of being disabled, still living in my own, on our own in Windsor Gardens. I never knew that when we have caretakers that come to look out for us. And Carrie met one of them this afternoon. But when we interview, first the organizer, whoever the staff is that I just tell them, it's like you need to have someone come who is comfortable with lesbians, because if somebody's homophobic, don't even send them over. And what Kim and I do is that when they come, we talk to them again to see what their comfort level is. And we've had caretakers for about the past 5 years or so, maybe a little longer. And you would be amazed that either A, they are lesbian or bisexual, or, B, that they have family members that are, you know, in the community and stuff like that. And so they're non-phased, they're kids. I mean, and they may not put it always so charitably. Like I had a lady say, "Yeah, my daughter's that way," and it's like, okay, that's fine. So that's your daughter. So I know it's hard to say those kind of things when that's your child sometime. But we're just honest about it, and we just tell them exactly who we are. Don't tell anyone that does the billing, please. But that's the way that we put together. We just tell them because we want them to be comfortable when they come into our home, or else they can find somewhere else to go and do their job. So thank you.
I had a personal question. Well, I shouldn't have said it. I was kind of curious about how maybe some of you have dealt with estrangement. Like the first photo talked about that they didn't have family. They had a sister, but that their parents didn't understand. And I guess I'm making assumptions about that. I don't know, being in the closet would create some sort of estrangements with your families and things like that. But I'm kind of curious how you might have balanced that through your life. If there was like a sort of tipping scale where you just learned how to accommodate uh, either tolerance, or if there was a method to how you chose to build your outside family, especially with the struggle of like mental health care, and that maybe you didn't have access to a therapist to help you talk those things out, but maybe just how you all have balanced that aspect of your journey in your life to this point.
Well, I am that first photograph, and I can speak to it. I'm 71 years old, and a lot of that happened when I was in my early 20s, or even earlier in college. I can't give you the whole scoop because the spectrum of dysfunction in my family there's the thesis right there. Everything from my mother was a Holocaust survivor, my sister has schizophrenia, on and on. So some of that estrangement with my father was due to that. But with my mother, it was about lesbianism. And even though she never rejected me, when I finally said it, I put her to bed for 2 weeks, don't you know? And then she wanted to know every single thing. And it became I was going to die and go to hell. And then it became that not only was I going to go to hell, her priest told her that because she had failed as a mother, she was going to go to hell too for my sin. Okay, so here's the picture. And there is not, you talk about a tipping point. I suppose there was one, but it just became so toxic to have to deal. It was an erosion over the years, and I did stay in touch with my mother until she died, but it was not a happy relationship, and I did it purely out of obligation, and I also did it because she was a caretaker for my sister. And I did it until she died. And my sister is still alive, and she's now in Colorado, and she's with me, and I'm her primary caretaker. But to answer your question, you kind of have to make a choice in your life, and it does take a lot of therapy. It really does. I mean, there's no question. But you have to realize that your choice is right for you.
And no matter what my mother said to me, the hurtful things about going to hell, I was a failure, and just, I mean, one thing after another, you do see the relationship die. And other than an obligation, my relationship with my mother was dead before she died. And that's the kind of estrangement. My father, he made those choices. He wanted nothing to do with this. My parents got divorced and he just walked away. Except he took care of my sister financially for the rest of her life. But it's a lot of just realizing that it's toxic. If you try, you can't make it be good. You can't make the relationship be good. So you have to let go. It's like a living death. And it's not just with lesbianism. I mean, other people have it with other things in their life. And so, I don't know if that answers your question, but
You gave me solid confirmation, so I think that was good.
I will tell you this, there is a book, like 100 years ago, called Now That You Know. And it was for parents or family members of people who were gay. And it's a powerful little book. I'm sure it's still around. If you can get your hands on it, it's very helpful.
So
Can I
bef-
say something?
Oh, good, oh, good, thank you.
This will be short. So my name is Christy, and I identify as straight. I am an ally and have been for years. And I met Carrie when we started our master's program at CU, I think 16 years ago, if I do the math. And Carrie wasn't out to, us at school. And I was just trying to think, we might have been friends for maybe at least 6, 8 years before you came out to me. And I'm just so proud of her for coming out, and I'm proud of the work that you do. And I work in career development at CU Boulder, and there's a career theory out there that says through work, we actively master what we passively suffer. And I just think that's a great example of how she is coming into her own and actively mastering who she is and wanting to help other people tell their stories. And part of what I love as a career counselor is getting to hear students' stories and who they are and who they want to be and where they want to go. And I want to do everything I can to help them. And so I look forward, I was late, traffic, but I look forward to seeing the exhibit afterwards and reading all of your stories. So thank you for being brave and courageous.
And we have recorded this session, so it will be posted to our website, so that if you want to listen to, or review it, it will be available, or share it. Maybe share it with friends and family members as well. This has been a joy, but it's also been a real honor to have you all here. I get verklempt too. To have you all here, how you have blessed this space. And it has just been a real privilege to work with Carrie, who is an artist. Yeah, you are, because you just did this, so now you are. Thank you all. Thank you so much for being here. Take care. Yeah, you are.